Panel now in Melbourne, Labor Parliamentary Secretary for Trade, Kelvin Thomson, and in Adelaide, Liberal Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Water and Environment, Senator Simon Birmingham. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Kieran.
Kelvin Thomson, first to you. Kelvin, I want to ask you about this issue, the fallout of the poll, essentially. The despair within Labor ranks is palpable. How do you regroup?
Kieran, I didn't talk to Labor colleagues yesterday, but I certainly talked with many colleagues over the course of the past fortnight when the Parliament was sitting, and no one was of a mood to throw in the towel, and nor should we. People who know a bit of political history know that in 2001 the Howard government was written off for all money, and in 1993 the Keating government was written off for all money. But those governments were re-elected, so there's no reason to throw in the towel. What I have detected is a view that we need to do more to punch a hole in the opposition's small target strategy, and the fact that they're able to get away with so little in the way of policy detail and give the impression that they will be able to balance the budget while at the same time getting rid of the mining tax, the carbon tax, and spending more money than Labor on things like defence and dams and east-west tunnels and the like. This is the political equivalent of a butcher offering you very cheap meat, and you need to make closer inquiries to see whether what you're buying is really beef or whether it's horse meat. So we've got a big task over the next 6 months to hold the opposition accountable on these things and to blast a hole in that small target strategy, which people acknowledge has been successful to date.
What about the tough start to the year? What do you put it down to, Mr Thomson?
Oh, well, there are a whole series of things which have caused it to be a difficult start to the year, but there is quite a lot of volatility in those opinion polls. There was a reverse yesterday, but at the late last year they'd gone up, so polls will bounce around. I also think that a lot of voters are undecided. I get a lot of people expressing some criticism to me of the government, but also expressing some concern about the opposition, and it seems clear to me that there are quite a lot of voters who are undecided. Now, when pollsters go out there, they work very hard at kind of excluding that undecided or putting them in one camp or the other, but it seems to me that there are plenty of undecided voters and therefore plenty of scope for Labor to make a political recovery during the course of this year.
Okay, Senator Simon Birmingham with us as well. I want to ask you about what seems to be already a coalition repositioning in the event of a possible leadership change. Is that a fair assessment that that is happening?
Look, I don't think that's the case, Kieran. I think what we're seeing at present is, of course, the Labor Party tearing itself apart. A lot of media speculation about who might lead the Labor Party to the election. The coalition's getting on with its job of outlining our positive vision for Australia and strategically and calmly releasing our policies between now and the election, as you would expect an opposition to do. And frankly, whether it's Kevin Rudd, who plunged Australia into debt and started the downward spiral, or Julia Gillard, who broke the competitiveness of Australian industry with her carbon tax, doesn't really matter to us. We'll be running against the Labor government, the Labor government's failures, their failure to deliver on so many of their promises, and we'll be running with our own positive vision that backs the ability of Australian businesses, of Australian families, of Australian individuals to do their best of their own accord, without government getting in their way, with the least possible taxation, with the least possible red tape and regulation, but with the type of competitive spirit that we believe Australia best thrives under.
Kelvin Thomson, I know you were suggesting the optimistic alternative that this could turn around, but there are a number of reports today across the various broadsheets and other papers today that even some of the Gillard backers, the strongest Gillard backers, believe if there isn't some shift, that this is likely to come to a head when Parliament returns on the 12th of March. Is that a likely scenario when it comes to the leadership?
Well, leadership speculation, Kieran, isn't helpful. What we need to do is focus on the things that we have done. Senator Brandis said we wouldn't be game to run on our record. He is completely wrong about that. We have a very strong record of economic management, which is the envy of other Western nations in relation to employment, inflation, interest rates, public finances and the like, and we'll certainly be running on our record. It's clear, of course, that people like Kevin Rudd will be out and about in the electorate campaigning. That is to be expected. I know that the media has something of an OCD, an obsessive compulsive disorder with leadership questions, and therefore focuses on everything that he does. But he is entitled to get out there and campaign. I believe he is an electoral asset for Labor. But the leadership question itself was settled by a ballot last year. The media said to us, you must settle this issue, you must have a ballot. We did.
It's interesting, yeah. Well, I'm not sure the disorder is just solely one of the media, as you put it. But let's move on. I want to talk about coal seam gas. Senator Birmingham, the decision by Barry O'Farrell to put a buffer around urban areas. What do you make of it? Is the science secondary at the moment to the political pressure?
Well, it's always been the right of state governments to determine land use policies in accordance with their own decisions as what is appropriate in terms of development, managing that against residential and community concerns. And that's what Barry O'Farrell's done. We've seen similar debates about wind farms and the like over recent years. In the end, state governments are empowered to do this under the Constitution. That's their job and that's their role. We, of course, need to be mindful of those community concerns about coal seam gas, but recognise that this is a very, very important export industry for Australia, very important to supplying Australia's future energy demands. And so this is an industry that certainly has an important place for Australia, but I think all Barry O'Farrell is saying today is it needs to be in the right places.
Kelvin Thomson, as the Parliamentary Secretary for Trade, just how important is this industry, and do you support the Australian Workers Union in the push that it's going to initiate today to expand the industry around Australia?
Well, Kieran, of course it is an important industry, and it's been part of the economic prosperity that Australia has enjoyed over the course of the last few years, notwithstanding all the predictions of doom and gloom around the mining tax and the carbon price. The fact is that our export income from this source has increased dramatically, that mining, gas and oil exports have been on the rise over the course of the past year, that jobs have risen greatly over the course of the last year in this industry, that exploration expenditure has increased in this area over the course of the last year. So there has been a lot of activity and a lot of prosperity generated as a consequence of that. As Simon Birmingham said, the issues surrounding particular projects are land use and planning issues which are essentially the domain of local and state government, where environmental factors, resident concerns and the like have to be balanced against the economic significance of particular projects.
All right, and finally, your thoughts, Kelvin Thomson, on Ben Ziga. He was apparently arrested by the Israeli authorities on suspicions of being a double agent, of giving information of his secret, the secret operations with Mossad to ASIO. This case gets more and more mysterious by the day.
Yes, and I don't have any particular insights into it, Kieran. I know that the Foreign Affairs Minister, Bob Carr, has ordered an investigation and a report to him about the way in which the matter was handled by Australian consular officials and the like, but I don't have any particular information or insight that I can contribute in relation to that. Obviously, he'll be investigating that.
Senator Birmingham, almost out of time, but your thoughts on the way that this issue has been managed?
Well, Bob Carr's already had to change his version of events on this matter once. We now see new information coming to light. If Bob Carr's latest version of events is in any way misleading, he should correct the record. Other than that, I note my colleague George Brandis says he's asked now for a briefing from ASIO, and of course if there are national security implications here, the Coalition will respect those. But Bob Carr does need to make sure he has not in any way misled the Australian people over this.
And as I understand it, that DFAT, that Department of Foreign Affairs review into this matter is due over the next week or so. We'll have the details for you as soon as we get them. Senator Birmingham, thank you for that. Kelvin Thomson, appreciate it this morning. Thank you.
Good to talk with you.
Thanks very much, Kieran, Kelvin.